My name is Adam Cox. I'm a phobia specialist, also known as the Phobia Guru, based on my track record of helping people eliminate their phobias in just a single session. Now, musophobia is the fear of rodents, quite often mice or rats or other small animals that tend to scurry. This is a very popular animal phobia. People that have this phobia tend to report having it their whole lives. They can't remember a time where they didn't have this phobia. But that quite often the phobia can get worse as people get older, and particularly if they are in a situation such as moving to an old house that has an infestation of rodents. Now, like many phobias, the phobia itself is established very young in childhood, quite often as a learned behavior from a parent or perhaps an older sibling. And this is quite common because when someone sees a rodent, if they have musophobia, then it tends to be quite a alarming shriek. They tend to move very quickly, and quite often the reaction, because the mice or rats perhaps are going to be on the floor, is to seek higher ground. So this is where you see that kind of cartoon image of someone jumping on a chair or a table, shrieking in terror because they've seen a mouse or a rat perhaps. Now, if a child was to see a parent have that kind of reaction, it's quite often the case that they're going to learn that fear as a form of learned behavior. Now, if that wasn't the case, if you have musophobia, a fear of mice, rodents, or rats, and you can't remember a family member that has had this kind of extreme reaction, then it's also likely that you may have had what's known as a sensitizing event. A sensitizing event is essentially something that would have happened, normally very young, that caused a high level of fear or anxiety, normally because of an unexpected event. Now, let's say you were a child, perhaps just kind of playing, and then out of nowhere, a mouse comes out a little crack in the floorboards or skirting boards. That would be unexpected. Okay, it might catch you out the corner of your eye. And the thing is, mice and rats, they tend to move rapidly. Now, that kind of reaction can then cause this kind of anxiety response, so that anything that kind of looks or moves like that can actually create a feeling of intense anxiety. So the symptoms of musophobia can be relatively low, just a feeling of mild discomfort at the idea of going to a place where there might be mice. So old buildings, for example, in London, the London Underground is just filled with mice and rats. So that tends to be a source of mild discomfort if someone has that particular phobia, if they know that they're going to be traveling in that kind of environment. It can increase to a feeling of anxiety if they are in closer proximity to a rodent, and can even increase to anxiety such as panic attacks if they are close to, let's say, many rodents and there is a feeling that they can't escape. They can't simply move away. So this is why many people will get in contact with me if they have a fear of mice or rats, is if they are living in a property that has an infestation. Now, in England in particular, you have quite a lot of old houses. Old houses are perfect habitats for mice and rats because they tend to have lots of gaps between floors and ceilings and under the floorboards and old skirting boards. So there are lots of places where they can actually live. The central heating makes it warm for them. And the problem is they can become resistant to things like poisons, and particularly mice. There can be lots of them. So even if you do have traps, they might not be sufficient to get rid of all of the mice. So this tends to be the reason, because if someone has a fear of mice or rats, the number one strategy that they tend to use is simply avoidance. They simply avoid the places where there would be those types of animals. So they avoid old buildings, they avoid kind of places where there's lots of clutter, for example. So old cluttered sheds and garages and things like that. It only really becomes a problem when the rodents are in the proximity of where they are living or sleeping, then it becomes an issue. Okay, so there are several reasons why historically there is this kind of association of fear related to rodents. And if you think about, some of the massive catastrophes, in terms of disease throughout history, things like the plague, the Black Death, it was discovered that actually it was the rats, the rodents, that were carrying certain fleas and infections, and they were the real carriers of this disease. So the association for some people are that rodents are dirty, they are disease orientated, and quite often rats, there's the stereotype that if a rat is cornered, it will be aggressive and attempt to bite. So for someone that has had maybe stories of mice and rats being dirty or infectious or biting, being a carrier of things like rabies, might associate these thoughts, and then that's the foundation of where their fear comes from. Irrespective of where the actual fear came from, what's really important to know is that the phobia itself can be eliminated very, very quickly. Now, there are several ways in which I help people to eliminate their phobia. And I recently worked with a gentleman who he was living in a property in London, and there was a big infestation of mice. It was mice for him, not rats. But it reached the point where he was having to, not live in his own house. He was staying in hotels because the sound of the scurrying or seeing droppings, for example, of the mice were just enough to make him so uncomfortable that he wasn't able to live in his own home. So the way in which I worked with him was I did a phobia session, a phobia elimination session in my practice in Harley Street in central London. So there are some people that will just work with me one-on-one, and then I can work out specifically what they do to create this fear or anxiety or panic reaction, and then break that pattern so they can actually be around, things like mice or rats or, even other things. Someone with Musophobia might have a similar kind of reaction to a gerbil, for example, or a hamster. So the reactions are severe. It might seem comical to those people that don't have the fear, but to someone that has it, it is a really unpleasant feeling, absolute horrible thing. And they don't, if you have it, you don't need to keep having it. That's the real message I want you to get from this video. So working with me one-on-one is absolutely fine, perhaps if you live in England or the UK and you're able to get to London. That's fine. Many people, however, don't live in the UK or England, and they're not able to work with me face to face. So I tend to do a lot of my international client sessions via Skype or FaceTime, or using high quality cameras, high quality microphones. It's a very similar experience to me actually being with someone one-on-one. So there's that way I can work with people as well. And for other people, they will download a 7-day phobia elimination course. So although I'm not working one-on-one with them, all the content that I've created over working with hundreds and hundreds of phobia clients can actually be used to systematically break the patterns and the foundations that make the fear and anxiety possible for that particular individual. If you are someone that suffers from either this phobia or any other phobia, if you go to phobiaguru.com and go to the relevant page, you will be able to download a video that I normally charge £30, which is the equivalent of about $40 US. And that video is absolutely free of charge. So go to phobiaguru.com, check out that video, and that video will show you what phobias are, why you have phobias, and the crucial thing is how phobias can be eliminated, and eliminated quickly. So I hope this video has been useful, and I look forward to interacting with you in some way, either face to face or through my website. Take care.